Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. On this occasion, we would like to explain to you guys about Marxism from the group 5. That will be presented by me, Ahda Sabila, and my friend, Luca, Greceri, Febrin. So the first thing that I will explain to you guys is what is Marxism. So Marxism, first of all, it is conducted by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 19th century. So Marxist cultural theory locates all forms of art within existing social condition of economics and politics. So this theory pays attention to the modes through which literature and art actively help maintain power relation at the cost of weight. So this theory approaches the art object as an important element within social relation through which particular meanings are standardized and help us as a good taste in order to marginalize and ignore other meanings. We move to the class turn, Marx and Engels, of their theory. First, Marx and Engels noted the word class as the key element in such a society since the nation as England had become industrialized societies. And these societies exhibit two different classes where the upper classes, such as feudal landlords, factory owners, capitalists, sought to keep the working class, such as serfs, factory workers, proletariat, under their control. So this process of domination or hegemony within the society becomes the central feature of Marxist thought. Class, in simple terms, refers to the division within a particular society. In Marxist thought, class refers to the economic groups within a society. So, as we know that the class here in Marxist theory divided into two. The first one is upper class, and the second one is lower class. So, a class of people control the factory and the industry called means of production, and a class of people work in the factory. So for the example of this theory, we can see in the famous poster for the Devil Wears Prada. The explanation would be like the shoes represents aesthetic sense and high fashion. But why isn't pair of working boots for the working people? It's because working class boots do not qualify as a fashion. So fashion is associated with the footwear of particular classes and provisions professions, which high heels shoes represent of working in offices and work in carpeted surroundings. So this representation refers to the upper class rather than lower class. So next we move to the Marxism and culture. Marxism provides a sociological context and interpretation of cultural forms, for example, like film or novel. So, Marxist criticism seeks to explore the links between a literary or cultural artifact and the social economic conditions in which the artifact exists. And the Marxist also seeks a social reference. Marxist approach to culture focuses on both production and consumption of the culture artifact. It means it focuses on the artist and the audience. For example, we can see on the Narayan's novel depict middle-class life in a small South Indian town, while Rushdie's fiction After Midnight Children deals almost exclusively with upper middle classes in the metropolitan Bombay or Mumbai. So that's the example of Marxism and culture, where Marxism represent the culture of group of people. Next, we move to the culture, ideology, and hegemony. So culture forms are modes of representation. Marxist criticism says how such representation reflect or refract existing economic conditions. For example, like we have already noted by invoking criteria of taste or aesthetic, the art of working classes can be rejected by the dominant classes. This means only the dominant class representation of the society is treated as a valid or correct. And then we move to the ideology, which is the writings, speeches, beliefs, and opinions that assert the naturalness and necessity of economic practices. Ideology, also called as false consciousness, is a system of ideas, values, beliefs through which we perceive the world. So ideology is about power because it legitimizes the power of the dominant classes or section of the society. And then we move to the hegemony. Hegemony is the domination and reinforcement of power relation, which refers to the processes including ideology through the dominant classes maintain power through the consent of the people. So hegemony is the domination of particular section of society by the powerful classes, not necessarily through threats of violence or the law, but by winning their consent to be governed and dominated. As can be seen, hegemony involves question of ideology because it seeks to naturalize and legitimize an equal power relation by suggesting. So, this how ideology works. Ideology works by naturalizing the constructed roles. The construction term as interpolation, where interpolation consists of two stages. First one, ideology persists the individual, and individual is inserted into the ideological shapes. The second one, predetermined set of roles out of which the individual automatically chooses, the while assuming that she or he has freely chosen them. And then we move to the base and superstructure. So base and superstructure in Marxism refers to the relationship between the economic and social cultural aspect of society where the economic base determines, influences, and forms the cultural superstructure. Base here refers to the factor and relations of production, while superstructure refers to the law, literature, arts, religions, and lifestyle. So, for example, we can see the American films reflect to the capitalist nature of production where individuals are aliened from their work as well as each other. Hence, their films also often show a sense of fragmented society with a high degree of individualism. So the ideology of cultural forms, for example, like social justice and rebellion, reflect the economic condition. And class conflict, exploitative capitalism, the domination of the bourgeois class will manifest as political power. So in the conclusion, the base, which provides a superstructure, will in turn be strengthened by the superstructure itself. So the next explanation will be presented by Luca.
Okay, so next, Raymond Williams, Cultural Materialism and Determination. Raymond Williams was a major Marxist critic and a key figure in the New Left, influencing cultural studies. He argued against a rigid base superstructure model, emphasizing temporal lags and the need to study determination. He believed that culture is ordinary and shaped by historical and social context. His concept of cultural materialism analyzes cultural practices within institutional, economic, and ideological structures. William also viewed culture as inherently political, reflecting social and economic changes, a perspective he explored in The Culture and Society, 1958. In television, the technology and culture forum, William criticized technological determinism, arguing that media is shaped by political interest rather than acting as a natural force. He redefined the economic base as a process rather than a fixed structure. His idea of determination suggests that cultural forms experience pressures from multiple social forces, where various sometimes contradictory factors influence a cultural practice. For example, Hindi films are shaped by Hollywood, traditional values, economic factors, and global trends. Similarly, Amitav Ghosh fiction reflects economic, cultural, and ideological contradictions, such as writing about India in English or a colonial language. Williams' work demonstrates that traditional Marxist-based superstructure models cannot always explain cultural practices, as these may reflect both past and emerging economic conditions. He also argued that ideology is reinforced through institution and selective traditions and shaping what is perceived as dominant culture. Next. Dominant, residual, and emergent cultures. So, cultural practices do not always directly reflect economic conditions, but rather than negotiate with them. Residual culture refers to elements of the past that persist in the present, such as Gandhian nonviolence in the Lagit Kraho Munabai or nationalism in war films like Border and Gada. Meanwhile, dominant culture represents the prevailing norm, seen in the consumerism of Dom or the ideology of Indian family in Bollywood films. In contrast, emergent culture introduces the new values and meanings such as diaspora themes in Dilwale Dulhania or youth activism in Rang De Basanti. Often, cultural forms mix these elements. For instance, DDLJ blends Hindu family values with a westernized Indian identity. Ultimately, Raymond Williams emphasized that cultural forms are shaped by social and historical processes rather than being solely determined by economic influences. Next. Next, the culture industry. The culture industry, a term coined by Max Horkheimer and Theodore Adorno, refers to the mass production of cultural goods, treating films, novels, and entertainment like any other consumer product. This concept suggests that culture is not an abstract creation of individual genius, but a product of social and economic conditions. The culture industry standardizes pleasure and values, making individuals passive consumers rather than critical thinkers. In mass culture, products are marketed not just for their utility but as lifestyles, as seen in Bollywood films where brands, fashion, and location symbolize social prestige. For instance, like Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Karan Johar films. This industry promotes ideology, making commodified sentiment like patriotism, family values, and corruption appear natural and unquestioned in it. Adorno warns that this doesn't mean consumers are entirely passive. Their consciousness is split. They enjoy the culture industry's offering while also doubting its influence. Even urbanism, such as standardized housing project, is seen as part of this industry, reducing individuals to unit in a system rather than independent beings. Next. Art, work, and production. Art, whether in the form of films, books, or visual works, functions both as an imaginative creation and as a commodity product for profit. Terry Eagleton's concept of the literary mode of production aligns with the Marxist perspective, viewing cultural products as material commodities shaped by economic conditions. Pierre McCarey further developed this idea, arguing that literature is a social product influenced by historical context rather than the work of a singular genius. He suggests that text contains silences due to ideological constraints, making them inherently incomplete. Aesthetic values in the literature and art often obscure underlying social conditions such as class conflict and power structures. Raymond Williams illustrates this by analyzing how landscape painting from the 17th and 18th centuries erased the presence of laborers to appeal to elite audiences. Similarly, Eagleton's ideology of the aesthetic argues that aesthetic often serve dominant ideologies, reinforcing existing power structures rather than challenging them. Next. So, Pierre Bourdieu also expands on this idea through concepts such as habitus, which refer to the social environment shaping an individual's perception and behaviors, and field and structured spaces where individuals compete for resources. His theories on cultural capital and symbolic capital highlight how cultural hierarchies perpetuate social inequalities, often through symbolic violence, where dominant classes impose their tastes on the values on others. And also, Frederick Jameson links cultural production to economic phases, arguing that realism corresponds with market capitalism. modernism with imperialism, and postmodernism with multinational capitalism. In postmodernity, culture represses contradictions and neutralizes revolutionary potential. Art becomes commodified, emphasizing surface appearance over depth, with pastiche imitation of previous styles dominating cultural production. This results in a fragmented, depoliticized cultural landscape that ultimately reinforces the status quo. Next. Next. Okay. Short haul and the rise of cultural studies. Cultural studies examines how cultures such as movies, TV, music, and sports shape society and identity. It focuses on power and meaning, exploring how different groups influence and control cultural interpretation. Shorthall, a key figure in cultural studies, argued that culture is a site of struggle where groups compete to define meaning. He introduced the circuit of culture, which suggests that cultural products should be studied through five elements: representation, identity, production, regulation, and consumption. Hall also emphasized that identity is not fixed but constantly changing. A person can have multiple identities, such as being both Black and British, with different aspects becoming important in different situations. Cultural identity is shaped by factors like history, race, gender, and social conditions. Cultural studies help us understand how power operates in everyday life, showing why some voices are louder than others and how meanings are created and change over time. By studying culture, you can see how identities, ideologies, and struggles for power are reflected in everyday practices. And the last, next. So we will explain what is our object for our research on cultural studies. So our object is The Hunger Games, the movie, in the year of 2008. So we will analyze how the Hunger Games reflects Marxist ideas such as class inequality, worker exploitation, and media control. Even though it's not a Marxist film, it highlights problems similar to those in our real world. In the Hunger Games, we see extreme inequality, like the capital represents the rich ruling class, or we can say that they're bourgeois, which is living in luxury, while the districts represents the working class or the proletariat, which is struggling to survive. This reflects how capitalism works, which is workers create wealth, but they don't benefit at all from it. In Marxism, alienation happens when workers feel disconnected from their labor. In the Hunger Games, the districts work hard to produce resources for the capital, but they remain poor and powerless. This is similar to how many workers today work long hours but still struggle financially. The capital uses the Hunger Games to distract and control people, making them focus on the entertainment instead of rebelling. Now, in real life, media and entertainment often serve the same purpose, like keeping people distracted from social and economic issues. And here's the irony: the Hunger Games criticizes oppression and exploitation, but the film itself became a massively profitable product for capitalism. So, is the Hunger Games a Marxist film? Maybe not intentionally, but it reflects Marxist ideas, which is class struggle, exploitation, and media control. And its popularity shows that many people relate to these issues in today's world. Next. Okay, so here we see that the capital, which is the bourgeois, enjoys luxury, while the district, which is 12 district or the working class, suffer the poverty, even though they work so hard. So this is similar to capitalism, where the workers produce wealth but don't benefit from it, like I've said before. So um, the Hunger Games is used to distract the control to the districts. In real life, just like in the real life, media and entertainment often distract people from economic and social problems by adding some by controlling people with games or with celebrity issues or something like that.
So that's all from us. We hope that our explanation can help you understand about Marxism. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.